In today's episode, we're exploring 5 safari tourists killed by African predators. From an overconfident wildlife photographer who got too close to a male lion, to an elderly couple whose anniversary camping trip ended in horror with a hyena clan. But first, we begin with the first story, where experience couldn't save a man from his own arrogance. It was March 14th, 2016, and the golden afternoon light was beginning to slant through the acacia trees of Kruger National Park in South Africa. The dry season had left the landscape parched and dusty, with scattered branches of yellow grass stretching endlessly toward distant kopjes. The air shimmered with heat waves, and the only sounds were the distant calls of guinea fowl and the soft rumble of safari vehicles navigating the gravel roads that crisscross this vast wilderness. David Thornton had been photographing African wildlife for over a decade, and at 41, he considered himself one of the best freelance photographers working the continent. His portfolio was filled with stunning close-up shots that other photographers envied. Images that require getting dangerously close to some of the world's most lethal predators. He'd built his reputation on taking risks that others wouldn't, often ignoring park safety guidelines to capture the perfect shot. This trip to Kruger was supposed to be the culmination of years of work, a final collection of images for a coffee table book that would cement his legacy. David had been tracking a particular pride of lions for 3 days, studying their movements and waiting for the right moment. He'd grown comfortable around these animals, convinced that his years of experience had taught him to read their body language and predict their behavior. That afternoon, David spotted a magnificent male lion resting in the shade of a marula tree about 200 yards from the main road. The lion was massive, easily 400 pounds, with a dark, full mane that marked him as the pride's dominant male. He lay stretched out in the dappled shade, seemingly oblivious to the world around him, his massive head resting on his paws. African lions are apex predators that have ruled the savanna for millennia. Adult males can weigh up to 500 pounds and reach speeds of 50 miles per hour in short bursts. During mating season, which typically occurs from May to August, males become extremely territorial and aggressive, defending their pride and mating rights with lethal force. Their powerful jaws can exert over 650 pounds of pressure per square inch, easily capable of crushing bone and severing spinal cords with a single bite. David parked his rental vehicle about 100 yards away and studied the lion through his telephoto lens. The shot was good, but not great. The angle was wrong, and the vehicle's presence in the frame would ruin the natural composition he was after. He'd taken similar shots from vehicles dozens of times before, but this one demanded something different, something that would set it apart from every other lion photograph ever taken. Against every rule he'd ever been taught, David quietly opened his vehicle door and stepped onto the dusty ground. He moved slowly, camera in hand, using the scattered thorn bushes as cover as he approached the resting lion. The animal's ears twitched occasionally, but he showed no signs of alarm as David crept closer, stopping at what he estimated was about 30 feet away. The lion's massive head lifted slightly, yellow eyes focusing on the human intruder with predatory intensity. David froze, finger poised over his camera shutter button, waiting for the perfect moment. What he didn't realize was that this particular male was experiencing heightened territorial stress, an early surge of aggression that sometimes occurs before the peak mating season, triggered by competition from younger males challenging his dominance. The lion rose to his feet in one fluid motion, his massive frame uncoiling like a spring. David managed to snap 2 photos before the predator's demeanor changed completely. The lion's ears flattened against his skull, his tail began twitching with agitation, and a low growl rumbled from deep in his chest. David took a step backward, finally recognizing the danger he'd placed himself in. But it was already too late. The lion exploded into motion with terrifying speed, covering the 30-foot distance between them in less than 3 seconds. David turned to run, his camera bouncing against his chest as he sprinted toward his vehicle. But the lion's powerful legs carried him forward with unstoppable momentum. The lion's massive paws struck David between the shoulder blades, driving him face first into the hard-packed earth. Before he could roll over or attempt to defend himself, the lion's jaws clamped down on his skull with crushing force. The predator's canine teeth, each over 2 inches long, punched through bone and brain tissue with sickening ease. David's body convulsed once as his spinal cord severed, then went completely limp. The lion maintained his grip for several seconds, shaking his massive head to ensure the kill, before releasing his victim and stepping back. Blood pooled rapidly in the dust beneath David's motionless form as the lion stood over him, panting heavily from the brief but explosive exertion. Other tourists in the area had heard David's brief scream and immediately radioed park rangers. A response team arrived within 15 minutes, but there was nothing they could do except secure the scene and wait for the lion to move away from the body. It took nearly an hour before the predator finally lost interest and wandered back toward his pride. David was pronounced dead at the scene, his skull crushed beyond recognition and his cervical spine completely severed. The investigation revealed that he had violated multiple park safety regulations by leaving his vehicle and approaching a wild lion on foot. Kruger National Park faced no liability, but officials used the incident to reinforce safety briefings for all visitors. David's camera, found near his body, contained the last 2 photographs he'd ever taken, stunning close-up images of the lion that killed them. His family chose not to publish them. The coffee table book project was quietly abandoned, and David's existing portfolio was donated to a wildlife conservation organization. While David's arrogance proved fatal in his solo encounter, Sarah Mitchell's romantic honeymoon walk led her straight into a lioness's hunting ground. It was August 7th, 2015, and the sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon over Kenya's Masai Mara, painting endless grasslands in shade of gold and amber. The luxury safari lodge, where Sarah and Mark Mitchell were staying, sat on a slight rise overlooking the Mara River, offering a civilized oasis in one of Africa's most dangerous wilderness areas. Sarah Mitchell was 28 and living her childhood dream. As an elementary school teacher from Oregon, she'd spent years saving every spare dollar for this honeymoon safari, filling scrapbooks with pictures of African animals and reading everything about the continent's wildlife. She'd married Mark just 2 weeks earlier, and this trip represented the adventure of a lifetime. The couple had been at the lodge for 3 days, taking guided game drives and marveling at the abundant wildlife surrounding them. Sarah had already photographed elephants, giraffes, zebras, and dozens of antelope species, but was still hoping for that perfect lion sighting. Lodge staff had assured them that short walks near camp were safe during daylight hours within designated boundaries. That evening, as the African sun began to sink toward the horizon, Sarah suggested they take a romantic walk to find a private spot for sunset photos. Mark was initially hesitant. The lodge's safety briefing had been specific about staying close to main buildings, but Sarah's enthusiasm was infectious. African lionesses are the primary hunters of their pride, using stealth, patience, and coordinated attacks to bring down prey much larger than themselves. They typically hunt during cooler hours of dawn and dusk, when their tawny coats blend perfectly with the golden grassland. A female lion can weigh up to 400 pounds and possesses night vision 6 times better than humans, making them perfectly adapted for ambush hunting in low light conditions. The couple had walked hand in hand away from the lodge's safety perimeter, following a game trail that wound through patches of tall grass and scattered acacia trees. The landscape looked peaceful in the golden light, with only the distant sounds of birds and insects breaking the silence. About a half a mile from the lodge, Sarah spotted a particularly beautiful cluster of red and yellow blooms growing near a small termite mound. She released Mark's hand and walked ahead about 50 yards to gather flowers, planning to press them in her journal as honeymoon mementos. What neither realized was that they had wandered into the hunting territory of a solitary lioness, The predator had been tracking a small herd of impala earlier and was now positioned in tall grass near the termite mound, waiting for antelope to return to the evening grazing area. Sarah knelt beside the flowers, her back to the surrounding grassland as she carefully selected the most perfect blooms. The lioness, startled by the unexpected human presence in her hunting ground, immediately shifted focus from the absent impala to this new opportunity. Sarah's crouched position and isolated location triggered every predatory instinct the lioness possessed. The lioness began her approach with the silent precision that had made her species the apex predator of the African savanna. She moved through the grass like a golden shadow. Powerful muscles coiled for the explosive burst of speed that would end the hunt. Sarah remained completely unaware, humming softly as she arranged the flowers. Mark, standing 50 yards away, was the first to spot movement in the grass behind his wife. He opened his mouth to call a warning, but the lioness was already in motion. She covered the final 20 feet in 2 powerful bounds, claws extended and jaws opened wide. The lioness struck Sarah from behind with devastating force, her 300-pound frame driving the young woman face first into the ground. Before Sarah could scream or struggle, the predator's jaws clamped down on the back of her neck, canine teeth severing the spinal cord instantly. Sarah's body went limp as her nervous system shut down, flowers scattering from lifeless fingers. Mark's horrified screams echoed across the grassland as he watched his wife die in the lioness's jaws. The predator maintained her grip for several seconds, ensuring the kill was complete before releasing Sarah's body and looking up at Mark with a blood-stained muzzle. Lodge security guards, alerted by Mark's screams, arrived within minutes with high-powered rifles and spotlights. The lioness, satisfied with her kill and showing no interest in Mark, melted back into the tall grass and disappeared. Guards found Sarah's body lying motionless beside her scattered flowers, her neck broken and life ended instantly. Emergency medical personnel confirmed Sarah had died immediately from massive trauma to her cervical spine. The investigation revealed the couple had violated lodge safety protocols by venturing beyond designated safe areas, but no criminal charges were filed. The lioness was tracked by Kenya Wildlife Service rangers over the following days and eventually relocated to a more remote area of the reserve, away from tourist facilities. Lodge management implemented stricter safety measures, including mandatory escorts for all guest activities outside the main compound. Sarah's funeral in Oregon was attended by hundreds of students, fellow teachers, and community members who remembered her infectious love of learning and adventure. Mark established a scholarship fund in her name for students pursuing careers in wildlife education, hoping her passion for animals might inspire others to study and protect them safely. Sarah's romantic walk ended in tragedy, but Margaret O'Brien's solo photography adventure led her into a leopard's deadly ambush. It was June 19, 2017, and morning mist was just beginning to lift from the Chobe River in northern Botswana. The air was crisp and clean, filled with the sounds of awakening wildlife. Hippos grunting in shallows, elephants trumpeting in the distance, and the melodic calls of hundreds of bird species greeting dawn. Margaret O'Brien was 63 and finally living her dream. After 35 years of teaching high school biology in Massachusetts, she'd retired the previous year following her husband's death from cancer. The African safari had been something they planned to do together, but after Robert's passing, Maggie decided to make the journey alone as tribute to their shared love of nature. Maggie was an experienced hiker and nature enthusiast who spent countless weekends exploring New England's forests and mountains. She felt confident in her ability to read natural environments and animal behavior, though she'd never encountered anything more dangerous than black bears. The guided walking safari through Chobe seemed like the perfect way to experience African wildlife up close. Her guide Thabo was a local Botswana ranger with over 15 years of experience leading tourists through the park's diverse ecosystems. He'd given a standard safety briefing that morning: stay together, move quietly, and never separate from the group under any circumstances. African leopards are perhaps the most dangerous of the big cats, due to their stealth, strength, and unpredictable nature. Males can weigh up to 200 pounds and are capable of dragging prey twice their size up into trees. They're solitary ambush predators with exceptional night vision and hearing, perfectly adapted for hunting in dense vegetation. Unlike lions, leopards rarely give warning before attacking, preferring to strike from concealment with explosive violence. The walking safari group consisted of 6 tourists and Thabo, moving single file along a narrow game trail that wound through dense mopane woodland. The vegetation was thick and green from recent rains, providing excellent cover for wildlife but limiting visibility to just a few yards. About 2 hours into the walk, Maggie heard what she thought was an unusual bird call coming from a thicket about 100 yards off the main trail. As a retired biology teacher, she was fascinated by African bird species and eager to add new sightings into her journal. Without thinking, she quietly slipped away from the group to investigate. Dense vegetation closed around Maggie as she pushed through the thorny branches and tangled vines, following the intermittent calls deeper into the thicket. The canopy overhead blocked most of the sunlight, creating a green twilight that made it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. What Maggie didn't realize was that she wandered into the territory of a large male leopard who'd been resting in the same thicket after a successful hunt the night before. The big cat had dragged the remains of a small antelope up into a nearby tree and was sleeping off his meal when Maggie's approach disturbed his rest. The leopard's acute hearing detected Maggie's movement long before she came into view. He dropped silently from the tree perch and began stalking her through the undergrowth, his spotted coat providing perfect camouflage in the dappled light. The predator moved with fluid grace, placing each paw carefully to avoid making sound. Maggie was bent over examining some interesting seed pods when the leopard struck. He launched himself from the shadows with explosive power, his 150-pound frame slamming into her back and driving her to the ground. Before she could scream or struggle, his jaws clamped on the back of her neck, canine teeth punching through vertebrae and severing her spinal cord. Maggie's body went limp instantly as her nervous system shut down. The leopard maintained his grip for several seconds, his powerful jaw muscles ensuring the kill was complete before releasing her and stepping back. Blood pooled beneath Maggie's motionless form as the leopard began its instinctive process of preparing to drag his kill to a more secure location. Thabo realized that Maggie was missing when the group stopped for a water break 20 minutes later. He immediately began backtracking along the trail, calling her name and scanning the bush for any sign of movement. Other tourists waited nervously as their guide's calls grew more urgent. Thabo found Maggie's body in the thicket 40 minutes after she disappeared. The leopard had already begun feeding, and there was nothing the guide could do except secure the scene and radio for help. Park rangers arrived within the hour, but the leopard had vanished into the dense vegetation. Maggie was pronounced dead at the scene, her neck broken and body showing clear signs of leopard predation. The investigation confirmed she had violated safety protocols by separating from the group, but no charges were filed against the tour operator. Chobe National Park implemented additional safety measures, including mandatory head counts every 15 minutes during walking safaris. The leopard was never located, despite the extensive tracking efforts. Officials determined relocating the animal was unnecessary since it had acted according to its natural predatory instincts when defending territory. New warning signs were posted at trailheads, emphasizing the dangers of leaving designated paths. Maggie's memorial service in Massachusetts was attended by hundreds of former students and colleagues who remembered her passion for teaching and love of the natural world. Her family donated her extensive collection of nature books to the school library, and established a scholarship fund for students pursuing wildlife biology careers. While Maggie's solo exploration proved fatal, Jake Morrison's need to impress others led him into the path of an entire lion pride. It was October 12, 2014, and the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the vast grasslands of Hwange National Park in Zimbabwe. The dry season had turned the landscape into a patchwork of golden grass and scattered acacia trees, with seasonal waterholes serving as magnets for abundant wildlife. Jake Morrison was 26 and addicted to adrenaline. The construction worker from Sydney had spent his savings on this African adventure with his older brother Tom, determined to collect stories that would impress his mates back home. Jake had always been the family risk taker, jumping off cliffs, riding motorcycles too fast, never backing down from dares. Tom, 3 years older and considerably more cautious, had tried talking his brother out of reckless ideas during their week-long trip. But Jake was determined to push boundaries, constantly asking their guide about getting closer shots and expressing frustration with safety restrictions keeping them confined to their vehicle. Their guide, Blessing, was an experienced local ranger who had been leading safaris through Hwange for over a decade. He'd developed a sixth sense for recognizing dangerous situations before they developed. That afternoon, he'd been particularly firm about staying in the vehicle when they encountered a pride of lions resting near a waterhole. African lions are social predators living in family groups called prides, typically consisting of related females, their cubs, and one or more dominant males. When threatened or protecting young, multiple lions coordinate their attacks with devastating efficiency. Female lions, though smaller than males, are actually more dangerous in groups due to the superior hunting skills and their protective instincts toward cubs. The pride consisted of 3 adult females and 4 young cubs, all resting in the shade of a large baobab tree about 50 yards from the waterhole. The lioness appeared relaxed, occasionally grooming each other or watching cubs play in the dust. But Blessing knew appearances could be deceiving. Female lions with cubs are among Africa's most dangerous animals. Jake studied the pride through his camera's telephoto lens, growing increasingly frustrated with the distance in the vehicle's presence in shots. Against Blessing's explicit warnings and Tom's desperate pleas, Jake quietly opened the vehicle door and stepped onto the ground. He moved slowly at first, camera raised, believing he could get quick shots and return to safety. The lionesses noticed Jake's movement immediately. Their relaxed postures changed to alert attention as they tracked the human intruder with predatory focus. The cubs, sensing their mother's tension, stopped playing and huddled closer to the adults. Jake had closed the distance to about 30 yards when the pride's protective instincts overrode natural caution around humans. 2 lionesses rose simultaneously and began moving toward him with purposeful strides. Their ears flattened against their skulls, tails twitched with agitation, and low growls rumbled from their chests. Jake finally recognized the danger and turned to run back toward the vehicle. But 30 yards was far too close to 3 protective mothers, and his sudden movement triggered the fatal attack response. The first lioness launched herself at Jake with explosive speed, covering the distance in 3 powerful bounds. The lioness struck Jake from behind, her 300-pound frame driving him face first into the hard-packed earth. Before he could roll over or attempt defense, her jaws clamped down on the back of his neck, canine teeth punching through vertebrae with crushing force. The second lioness arrived seconds later, claws raking across his back and shoulders as she joined the attack. Jake's scream cut off abruptly as his spinal cord severed. His body convulsed once, then went completely limp as the 2 lionesses continued their assault. The third female remained with the cubs, watching the attack with alert attention, but not participating. Tom watched in horror from beside the vehicle as his younger brother was killed just yards away. Blessing had already radioed for emergency assistance, But both men knew there was nothing they could do without becoming victims themselves. The attack lasted less than 30 seconds before the lionesses stepped back, satisfied the threat to their cubs had been eliminated. Park rangers arrived within 20 minutes, but Jake was already dead from massive trauma to his neck and spinal cord. The lionesses had returned to their cubs and showed no further aggression toward the humans. The investigation cleared Blessing of wrongdoing, confirming Jake had violated explicit safety instructions by leaving the vehicle. Wangay National Park used the incident to reinforce safety protocols and began requiring signed waivers acknowledging the lethal dangers of approaching wildlife on foot. Jake's funeral in Sydney was attended by hundreds of friends and co-workers who remembered his infectious enthusiasm and fearless approach to life. Tom struggled with survivor's guilt for years afterward, eventually becoming an advocate for wildlife safety education to prevent similar tragedies. Jake's need for the perfect shot cost him everything, but Harry Jameson's stubborn disregard for rules led him into a hyena clan's deadly territory. It was May 3, 2013, and the African night had settled over the Serengeti with velvet darkness. The camping area where Harry and Dorothy Jameson had pitched their tent was a small clearing surrounded by acacia trees, with the vast Tanzanian grassland stretching beyond flickering campfire light. Harry Jameson was 71 and set in his ways. The retired Iowa farmer had spent 50 years working land, dealing with livestock, and solving problems with practical solutions. He'd agreed to this African safari as a 50th wedding anniversary gift to Dorothy, though he privately thought safety restrictions were excessive and guides overly cautious. The budget camping safari had been Dorothy's compromise between her dream of seeing African wildlife and their limited retirement income. Instead of luxury lodges, they stayed in basic tents with shared facilities. Guided by local rangers who emphasized safety protocols, Harry found increasingly irritating. Their campsite was located in a remote Serengeti section, far from the main tourist routes but rich in wildlife activity. During the day, they'd seen elephants, giraffes, zebras, and numerous antelope species. But as darkness fell, the African bush transformed into a different world where predators ruled. Spotted hyenas are among Africa's most successful predators, living in large social groups called clans that can number up to 80 individuals. Despite their reputation as scavengers, hyenas are skilled hunters capable of bringing down prey as large as a wildebeest. They possess the strongest bite force of any mammal, with jaws capable of crushing bones other predators cannot break. Hyenas are primarily nocturnal and drawn to human settlements by food scent. That evening, the camp guides gave their usual safety briefing. Never leave tents after dark without escort, always use flashlights, and immediately alert guards about unusual sounds. Harry listened with barely concealed impatience, muttering about treating grown adults like children. Around midnight, Harry woke needing to use the bathroom facilities located about 50 yards from their tent. Dorothy stirred, asking if he wanted her to call for guard escort. Harry dismissed her concerns, insisting a quick bathroom walk hardly required armed escort. Harry unzipped the tent flap and stepped into the African night without a flashlight, relying on his memory of the campsite layout to navigate in the darkness. What he didn't know was that a clan of spotted hyenas had been scavenging around the camp's waste disposal area for several nights, growing bold from finding food scraps. Harry was halfway to the bathroom when he encountered the first hyena. The animal emerged from behind the supply tent, its distinctive sloped silhouette barely visible in the starlight. Harry stopped walking, assuming it was a dog or harmless scavenger. He made soft clicking sounds, the same noises he'd used to calm nervous livestock back home. The hyena's response was immediate and terrifying. It began the distinctive whooping call that gave the species its name, a sound that carried across the night air like demonic laughter. Within seconds, answering calls echoed from multiple directions as other clan members converged on Harry's location. Harry finally realized his danger and turned to run back toward his tent, but the hyenas were already surrounding him. The lead female, weighing nearly 150 pounds, approached Harry with purposeful strides, while the other clan members circled to cut off his escape routes. Harry stumbled in darkness, his 71-year-old legs unable to match the speed and agility of his pursuers. The first hyena reached him just as he fell, her powerful jaws clamping down on his left leg with bone-crushing force. Harry's scream shattered the night silence as more hyenas joined the attack. Clan's assault was methodical and devastating. Multiple hyenas bit and tore at Harry's legs, arms, and torso while he thrashed helplessly on the ground. Their jaws, designed to crack the bones of large prey animals, easily tore through human flesh and muscle. Harry's screams grew weaker as shock and blood loss took their toll. Dorothy's cries for help from inside their tent alerted the camp guards, who came running with flashlights and rifles. But the hyenas had already inflicted fatal damage, and Harry was unconscious from blood loss by the time guards drove off the clan with warning shots and bright lights. Emergency medical personnel worked frantically to stabilize Harry, but his injuries were too severe. He'd lost massive amounts of blood from multiple bite wounds, and several major arteries had been severed. Harry died in the camp's medical tent before the helicopter could arrive for evacuation. The investigation confirmed Harry had violated explicit safety protocols by leaving his tent unescorted after dark. The tour company faced no legal liability but implemented additional security measures, including motion sensor lights around bathroom facilities and mandatory radio check-ins for nighttime movements. The hyena clan was monitored by park rangers for several days but showed no unusual aggression toward other humans. Officials determined the animals had acted according to their natural opportunistic behavior and required no intervention beyond increased camp security. Harry's funeral in Iowa was attended by hundreds of neighbors and fellow farmers who remembered his dedication to land and family. Dorothy established a scholarship fund for agricultural students in his memory, hoping his practical problem-solving approach might inspire future generations. Thanks for watching. Just when you think you understand the relationship between humans and wild animals, we're just getting started. Click the next video for stories that'll show you the most dangerous places on Earth for unprepared tourists.